This session is called Pair Programming with ChatGPT, or How to Accelerate Your Programming Prowess for $25 a month. I am John Zavocki. I'm an artist, a developer, and a user experience engineer. I wrote my first program when I was 13 years old, back in '84. I could draw before I could speak. I got my master's in painting when I was 24. I got my degrees in software engineering, back-end server-side, from the School of Hard Knocks. I currently design software solutions for our amazing research scientists and clinicians at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center. I work with data cleansing, a lot of data migration, a lot of pathology, a lot of AI, making sure that what our pathologists and what our data scientists do happens in a timely and efficient manner without error, because when it comes to cancer, we don't have time, and we don't have time for mistakes. Who here, and raise your hand, has done pair programming? Okay, that's great. What is everybody's skill level? Raise your hand. Are you a newbie? Good. Are you a beginner? Okay, great. Are you a beginner expert, which is a beginner who thinks that they know everything? Are you seasoned, meaning that you have shipped to something that is live and people have used it? And are you a mentor, which means that you have rolled your eyes when someone mentioned React? No, just joking. Means that somebody in the world looks up to you and has asked you questions, and you help nurture the success of one of your colleagues or your students. Okay, great. All right, good. So we got a smattering. Okay, so pair programming is sometimes a dirty word in the real world, meaning that a lot of times in business that's run by managers, they see it as a duplicity, as they see something that, why are we wasting the time and the elements for two developers to do the work of one? And I've been in environments that saw this as being a dirty word, and I've also worked in environments where pair programming was essential, and the acceleration that we had with pair programming was unbelievable. How often do you actively use AI? Raise your hand if it's daily. Okay, that's great. Weekly. Emerging, which means I want to use it more, but I'm not really sure how to, but I think it's seductive and attractive. Okay, great. As a user experience architect, I always ask questions first, because I want to know who I'm talking to so I could cater my presentation to you. Okay. So when we talk about pair programming, there are a couple ways that we can look at pair programming. And we could look and see how different facets of pair programming can make it viable. And having a strategy is really important because of success. So you could start off as pair programming where the members are equal. This means that you're an A player and you're paired up with another A player to solve a problem. And that problem, when it comes to A players, means that you might have, I'm going to speak some agile here. You might have an 8-point user story, because that 8-point user story is going to take up your sprints, and you really don't know if you can complete it. So you're taking the whole thing to do this one user story, because it's really risky, okay? And so what you do is you pair together with somebody who is really knowledgeable, and you guys knock it out together. You try to solve it, which means that 8-point ticket might turn into a 3-point ticket. And it could be equal or unequal at that level. For example, you might be really an amazing programmer because you have fluency in a software product like Java or Objective-C or something like that. But you're new to a company, so you don't know the stack. Okay? And they pair you with somebody who is knowledgeable, who does know the stack. And what is you work together. And there might be some knowledge transfer or whatever, but you're two equals. And you're working together. And you're exchanging information. Okay? It frees up abstracting and thinking and executing. It's a collaboration. So for those who practice it, you're having a conversation where one could live in the mental model of his or her or their mind, and another person is figuring out how to translate that and putting it down and making it work. And that could be pseudocode. That could be, okay, we have to scaffold this. So here's our structure. What are we doing? Are we using OOP? Are we doing protocol-based? How does that work? How are we architecting this? What's available? Okay, so let's just write pseudocode and let's go through it, and then how do you think this should work? Well, I think this should look like this. Well, what library you should use? Maybe it's like this. Well, maybe we should do it like this because we can leverage this, and this has already been built. Oh, I don't know about that. Oh, that's okay, it's proprietary. We did it last year. Oh, okay, that's really great. So what you're doing is you're going back and forth, and you're working together, and you're building this. It's a conversation. And then maybe you have a trade-off. Somebody has to have a bio break or meet with a manager, and then the other person's executing, or they're thinking, and while they're off in that land, you're actually saying, okay, I'm just going to brute force go through this because this is root. I'm just going to write it down, and I know what comes in and what comes out. I just have to knock these out. Okay? And by the way, I'm going to do a unit test while I'm doing it because I have good practices. And that's really valuable. Okay? And they could trade too. It's not designated, but they could probably go back and forth. So it's very fluid. Pair programming as unequals is very powerful. This is one, you could think fast in tandem and you could unravel it, but you're actually playing not follow the leader, but you're playing lead the follower. So say, for example, what's an example I could use from real world? In open source, I was really active in the Drupal project about 10, 15 years ago. And what always blocked people who really thought that Drupal might be a great application to do what they need to do was the fact they could never install it. They could never install the damn program because it was, one, it was obtuse. Two, any type of tutorial they had, if there was a tutorial, had prerequisites about how to fix your box. And none of that was documented. Okay? So you could run it and it could fail and you're like, what the hell? And there would be no help. And if you were a newbie, God help you. Okay? Because you were lost. So my recommendation was always, when we had kind of events like this for Drupal, I was like, who is new and who really wants to use it? And I'd raise hands. Okay, who is really expert and can configure a box in their sleep? Okay, well, you two need to get together. And what happened was that you guys, you need to fix his box and get Drupal up and running. He's going to walk you through it, and he's going to, like a good contextual inquiry, he's going to verbalize what he's doing because everybody's box is different. And so you have to have the right packages, or if you can install MAMP or WAMP or whatever you want to do, which nobody really wants to do. They want to get down into it, and then you're going to configure it. And why do you do that? You do it because, one, you want to learn about that. You want to reduce frustration. But most importantly, in that situation, you don't want to kill inspiration. People come there with an itch. And if they don't get that itch scratched, then it falls apart. So if you're learning a new system, if you're learning how to do something new, the best thing you could do is find a better chess player and ask that chess player something. And the best thing that that chess player can do for you is listen to you. How do I do this? I want to try to do this. Oh, let me show you. What is this? Because everybody in their mind has the perfect app that's going to make them money. Everybody wants to do something. Everybody has an itch to scratch. Everybody's a builder and a creator. So it's a great way of using inequality to become equal. And pair programming is great because once after you get the install, well, what are you trying to build? How does this work? What is this done? Okay? The first experience I had programming was when I was working for Intel, and I was about 31, and the guy that I was paired with was 18 from Thailand, and I thought that he was instant messaging, but he was writing production code almost in his sleep. He was absolutely brilliant, and he was the kindest and gentlest person I ever met, and within a week set me up for a lifetime of good practices because his way of working was phenomenal. So not only did I learn about a new language, I learned how a really brilliant developer thought about code and thought about structures and thought about organizations and it wasn't anything like I thought of. And I've only met 4 absolutely brilliant programmers like that in my life, in my 35-year career. Okay? So how about with AI? This is very interesting because the dynamics have changed. AI presents an opportunity for a seasoned developer to co-create with another seasoned developer to make up for their limitations. AI also has the opportunity for a novice to come in and learn. Now, I'm going to focus on this. I'm going to say a beginner to focus and learn. You could be a really powerful developer. You might, like me, have learned in Pascal and Fortran, and then you get to something like C# and you have no idea what the hell you're doing. You don't even know how to frame it. God, I wish I had AI back in the mid-90s, okay? Because that was not fun. But the thing about this is this. I focus on the learning part because part of this conversation is how to pair program, not so that you could execute and solve things faster, but as anybody here, with the exception of writing your first hello world, has had all of your software run on the first take? Raise their hand. Yeah, that's what I expect. So you're never really coding, you're debugging. Writing code and writing software is only about debugging. So you have to get really good at debugging. So you don't just copy and paste it. You copy and paste it with a question from whatever AI, from whatever model you choose, and you do that with the idea that you're going to spend your time debugging. And then you're going to try to figure out what's wrong. And the other part of this is this. You don't want to get in the habit of letting AI write all your stuff, because if it gets too big, you don't know what the hell is going on. And once it gets to a place where it becomes unmanageable, that's not ever something you want to ship to production or use in a production environment. And just to level set, no developer at MSK is allowed to use AI in any production code. None. Because it's not vetted yet. Okay, and now we're not worried about making an extra $10 million on our end of quarter promo. We're worried about, does Elaine have the right diagnosis because she's at stage 3, and what can we do? Those are our questions that we have to answer. So, does that mean that now we can have tri-programming? 2 developers and 1 AI? It was really late at night, so I was thinking about 3 MCs and 1 DJ, but that's a bad joke. Can we do it more? Is there different opportunities now to accelerate using AI? So, this is a talk about that current state of affairs. And if you fall into one of those categories, how can you maximize using AI as a pair programmer? Because really, when you start using AI, you're pair programming. Okay, you're not just using it as a resource. You're having a conversation with it, which is why it's a ChatGPT. Okay? And you know that conversation only goes so far in the past because of tokens, so you want to be really clear about what you're doing and how you're doing it. And you want to be successful, because if you're going to be unsuccessful with it, you're not going to have a strategy. And when managers are going to intervene, they're going to do what I just thought of last night as the manager 180. where managers didn't want you to pair program because it was a waste of time, but they hell want you to use AI because they see it as a save of time, and they don't really care about the results because they don't really know really what the hell is going on. They just want to ship and make their target and make sure you close your tickets, which isn't ever a good dynamic to just focus on, okay? And that's real world stuff. So what we have to do is we have to police ourselves, and what we have to do is understand how to use it. So how do you use ChatGPT as a pair programmer? The most important thing is to pick your role, what I said. Who are you and what are you doing? Sometimes you're the follower because you have a question, okay? Sometimes you're a peer because you're actively engaged and you have agency. Agency is the ability to do anything, right? And providing a strategy for how to achieve the goal. So for example, you might say, I have to create this functionality. I have a good idea about how that functionality is done, but either I'm unsure, I want you to check me, I want to see if I'm right, or I'm going to put down something as a strategy, and can you tell me if you might think if it's better or worse? These are questions that you're asking it because you're trying to understand what you're doing. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's your username on that commit message. When they blame you, it's going to come back to you. And then, in 6 months, and please tell me you comment your code, because did you ever do this? Dear future John, you're going to want to refactor this. But after 8 hours, you're going to realize that you're just going to set it up the same way. So why don't you do this? Take those 8 hours, go get a coffee, and come back, and you just realize that you saved yourself a lot of pain. Okay? Those are always the comments that I always loved when I did. Okay? Pick a topic and narrow it down a chunk. Don't say, I need to do this functionality, and then use it. You are architecting it. You're saying, okay, here's my pair program. I'm going to scaffold it. I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to do it like this. I'm going to do it like. You can go into a model and write pseudocode. I want to do this. I want to do this. I want to do this. And chunk it up. And the more you give it a framework, the better it is. Here's a question. What has AI done? What is AI's contribution to software engineering? What has AI done that has been radically difficult for software engineers in the past to do? What's the number one thing that AI has solved that makes it seem almost magical? Does anybody know? Yeah. It could write documentation for you. That's amazing, and I love that, but that's not what I was looking for. But that's really good, okay? Because nobody likes to document their code, okay? Who else? Speed, definitely speed, but not necessarily something that I was thinking about, but speed is definitely it, okay? In the back?
If you know what you want to do, but like maybe you don't know the syntax of the specific language.
That's really important. And that is kind of a foot in the door to what I'm going to mention, because I'm going to run with that. The thing that AI has done that no other thing in software engineering has done, is that it has solved context. It understands context. Content is easy. Content is great. Computers can understand content all you want. 1 + 1 = 2. What's this? Get me this. Serve it up from a database. That's all content. Context is what we ship with. We ship with context. The mysterious thing about this brain and ear is that we understand context. We understand that, oh, look, that's a big building. Oh, I better not do that. We understand cause and effect, which is incredibly difficult for a computer to do because it's not aware of its state. It doesn't have this form, which is just basically a sensorial mechanism for understanding the world. Okay? So AI has provided context, which means it's not like a gambler's, the gambler fallacy. The gambler fallacy is a logical fallacy that says, if I play this roulette table more than 15 times, I'm going to get it on this next one. One run doesn't have to do with another run. Nothing has to do with the same thing that happened. That's how software used to be. Software, you ran a program, you ran a subroutine. You might have given a context, but you had to put it in there. But you couldn't have a conversation with it. AI provides context. Context is what makes it powerful. Context to say, oh, I see what you're trying to do. Let me solve this for you. No, there's a better way of doing this. Oh, that's really interesting. Rather than doing it like this, did you think about doing it like this? Now, you might not know if you just pump it in and get a piece of code back, but that's what that conversation is. That's what the computer is doing back, the AI is doing, that's saying you, hey, this is the conversation. So, I'm not going to go into the cell answer, I passed that, okay? So that's kind of what's coming up with it. So there are guidelines now for programming with ChatGPT. Let me see my time, okay, good. So, select a relevant model. So, who here has their favorite model that they work with for the problems that you try to solve? Have you done your due diligence? Have you tested it? I'm speaking at a Google Fest. I'm an iOS developer. I develop native iOS applications, okay? I love the Mac system, and I want to use the tools that I create, and I find it very efficient, and I just am fascinated by it. I'm also fascinated by the whole framework because every time I implement an S class, I'm cleanly aware that that came from 1980 in the next step. And that class that I'm using is about 30-something years old, which I think is pretty cool. Okay? So I use the Swift Copilot in ChatGPT to help me do things. And I'm going to show you some parts of the conversations that I have. And it led me to, when I talked to my teammates about how they use ChatGPT, they said, oh my God, we don't use it like you use it. You use it in a radically different way. And then when we looked at things, they said, but you got better results. Why did you get better results? And I said, that's very interesting. Why would I get better results? Why is this happening? So that's what I want to do. So when you think about what model you use, you have to choose your relevant model, and you should probably test one or two. Okay? And then, of course, you know, we can go through all the prompt engineering ones. We can go through Ape, we can go through Race, we can go through Coast, we can go through Tag. I started using CoStar a lot. CoStar was my favorite one, right? That's a really good one. So there's many different prompts that you could use and many different strategies to figure out how you're going to do that. And you don't have to worry about writing it down. If you want, email me, I'll send you a whole bunch of them. Okay? Yeah, big time. Yeah, focus on the present, not on note-taking. Okay? And here's something that I learned along the way. Don't try to engineer the most perfect prompt, because the most perfect prompt doesn't exist. There's a reason why it's a chat. You're refining as you have this conversation. You're going through. And if you looked at how as I was trained to write it, you write it down and then you do as small chunks as possible, as atomic chunks as possible, so that you could do it. And if you do it in that way, one, it'll be easy to troubleshoot. Two, you'll get more bang for your buck. You'll probably be high on the abstraction layer. Your polymorphism is probably going to go through the roof, right? All that great juicy stuff is going to happen the more anatomic that you go. So you architect a solution, you ask for options, and you explore efficiencies as a seasoned developer. You say, I have this understanding, I've done this before, let me see if this works, help me out here for speed as well as ability, or if you're using a new framework. As a beginner, you want to ask questions. And you want to ask for samples. You want to use your ChatGPT, your AI, to help you become a better programmer. And so it's not so much about getting this done, although you can do that. I have a deadline, I want to get this done. But doing that and not going back and learning from it, or more importantly, double checking it, because it's going to be wrong. The more complex your request is, it's going to be wrong. So you can either let the compiler tell you, or you can go back and you could say, Oh, no, this was deprecated 3 versions ago. I have to choose this other version. Let me see about this. How would I do that? Oh, I'm not sure about that. Let me ask. How would I refactor this to do this? You're doing this push and pull at an atomic level to go back and forth. This is why I said this talk is about pair programming, because it's about the conversation. It's about your conversation and your relationship with the AI that you're working with, so that you're learning. You're stealing information from that data pool and you're putting it in your head so you could become a better programmer and you could understand these forms and these structures in a great way. So iterations are your friend. And while you're doing this, by the way, once you get to a place, you'll start to oscillate between beginner and seasoned. Once you get to do this more and more, you're going to go back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's going to be really fun. Iterations are your friends, as we all know, right? Fail fast, fail often. Copy and paste only to debug. Scope functionality in atomic level. And always assume that the response is wrong. Always assume that the response is wrong. Always assume that the response is wrong.
What response?
The response from AI. Whatever it says. Run it in there. And we have the ability of, if we run something and we compile it, it'll throw a hissy fit. Okay, in other areas of the world, let me see, how do I get a mortgage and create a .org so that I don't have to pay taxes in the next 5 years? I don't know if you can have a compiler telling you that's right, wrong, or legal. Okay, but I will tell you that AI is going to give you an answer that's going to be pretty declarative, that's going to sound really true. And then, 2 months from now, you're going to realize, why is all my money gone? Okay, so don't trust anything that AI tells you. Okay? Let's look at some real world stuff. I'm going to open up my book. So here is, I was doing an app, and it's a very simple app, but it's, because it's on a mobile device, of course, when you develop for a mobile device, you don't know the environment, you don't know anything about it. And so I was having problems because my stuff wasn't loading in a timely fashion. I didn't get a chance to write the notification engine in. But when I was doing testing on the outside, I was seeing it failing because when I'm not on the Wi-Fi and I'm going through some 5G or a 5+, it radically degraded. And so I asked my friend Joe, who's actually giving a session next door, how would I do this? And he said, well, what you want to try to do maybe is exponential back-off implementation. Has anybody done that in their programs? Okay, makes sense, right? So that basically means, hey, you try something, instead of retrying it and putting stress on the system, if you don't get a response back that's acceptable, okay, what you want to do is you want to come back and you say, okay, we're going to try it maybe well, we could use the Fibonacci. I'm going to try it, and then I'm going to come back at 3 seconds. And then I might try it again. Okay, I'm going to come back at 5 seconds. Okay, I'm going to try it, but I'm going to come back at, well, maybe I'll just jump to 13. Okay, what you're doing is you're extending that time so that you cannot overpower the system, because it might not just be something that's easy. There might be something in favor, but you don't want to do it repetitively. I didn't know that this existed. And I thought, okay, well, how the hell am I going to do this in a framework? So what I did was, I said to my good friend, my Swift ChatGPT, I was having a conversation with a dev friend about my app. And how when I test it on an iPhone, sometimes the response from the server using async await concurrency fails to load. And so I don't know how to handle this. He said that you might want to try exponential backoff, and I got what that meant, but I'm not sure how to do it. So one, I'm using an async await. Does that structure take these conditions into consideration and handles them in a more robust way? Or is exponential backoff something I should try? Here's my data manager class for reference. So what did I do? I tried to give it context, maybe not in a CoStar way, but I tried to bullet point things. I tried to give it tokens that I could say, this is the context that I'm trying to do, okay? And then I gave the class, and Swift Copilot came back and says, okay, so here's the deal. It may fail intermittently, but it's a smart approach. So here's a step-by-step solution to how to do this. And it's defining a strategy, it's doing error handling, it's not giving a async await. What Copilot didn't do was just say, I didn't say, hey, take this thing, here's my, my file loader, my image loader, and my fetch server class. Return something and configure this so that I could just implement this exponential back-off implementation. My goal here is to understand what this is because I know if I invest into myself, I'm going to be a better programmer. So let me take the time to actually learn. And then when it fails, which it did, I could go back and I could understand what's going on and I could become better. And so when I showed this to Joe, he said, this is really funny. I said, what? He said, you actually have a conversation with this damn thing. Who here has these? Do you guys do this?
Sometimes.
Right? How detailed do you get?
Depends.
Depends. Well, yeah, that's always the answer. Depends. Okay. But the idea here is that I'm trying to understand the context because I know that the thing that AI gives me more than anything is context. And I could go through all Nerd Ranch books. I can go through all O'Reilly books. I can scope and kind of rack my, well, I've already teared my hair out. I could tear my hair out at Stack Overflow, okay? Maybe no one's going to give me this with an example that's going to be relevant to my context, to which, here's the App Data Manager, and it went through and it did it. And it gave me an explanation. To which I said, okay, this is a bit intense. I see what you're doing. I'm going to have wrap several functions in this, and I get it. I love the fact that you made an extension, because I really didn't think of that. I didn't really think of that. I get that too, and that's pretty smart. And so I go back through and I go to debug it, and it fails. It's actually not really working. And I go through it and I say, okay. And then I gotta get it work because actually really in code, it wasn't really a fault of the logic. ChatGPT took some of my variables and didn't match them together. So it was using something that it didn't do it because I didn't give them the whole class, I just gave them my data manager, and then it just failed. And once I realized, oh, that's it, I switched out these things and then it worked, much to my surprise. And of course I say one more thing, could I delegate that to a back thread rather than being on the main thread? Because if I'm getting here and I want to do this, I could probably put up something and I can move it to the back thread, right? So that I don't use resources. And then if I update it from my data lake, as I pull it in, I don't have to do it on the main thread. And of course it says, oh yeah, absolutely. Offloading and retries, the background, blah, 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 blah. So what do? I have a problem. I don't know anything about it. Is that a question? You're moving your hands. I didn't know if that was a question. Okay, good. I just want to make sure. I don't want to ignore you if you had a question. Okay, so I didn't know anything about it. All right, I need you to help me. This is what I could figure out, probably, and this is probably my best guess where to put it. Can you do this to help me and show me how to extend this class? Oh, wow, you made an extension of that. Oh, that was really smart. Okay, that's really cool. Okay, I tried it. Okay, I debugged it. I didn't come back and say it's not working. I thought, let me figure out if I could understand this and see if I could do it myself. Let me challenge myself so I could become a better programmer. Okay, I got it to work. Okay, this is really great. Wow, this is running on the main thread because actually that was my one-trick pony. I was loading everything on the main thread, which was probably the root problem, was I was probably taking too much resources to load all these, taking too much of the resources to load my resources, talk about context, and then I was overloading the system. So then I come back and I do this, and it tells me how to do this as a back thread, to which I'm like, all right, that's awesome. And then it gives me a great thing. I might do that. That seems to be better. Okay, this will take me some time, but give me a shot. And so I can go back and I could do that. This is one of my conversations with the ChatGPT. Okay? Another one was this. So I'm developing this, and as everybody knows, when you're developing something new or you're learning, trying to do things, you're never going to optimize. You're going to do it, and you just want to get it plugged in. You just want to see, let's make sure it works. And then once I get confirmation that it's going to work, I'm going to go back and try to refactor it to make it more economical. Okay? So I did all this stuff, and it was working. I was pulling from my data lake, and this was great. I was working in core data, which in an iPhone app, it's an internal database that you could use to have data persist from session to session. Okay, it's not cross-device, That's iCloud, other stuff that you could use. But you know, we all, if you're developing things, you're all going to have that. And so here is the thing. I realized that when I did my timestamp check, and now I'm doing another check, I realized, oh God, I got duplicate code. All right, well, let me see if I can refactor that. So this was a question of speed. I could have gone back and I could have done it, and I could have sat down there. But instead I chose to actually ask it, hey, could you implement this in this way, because this is a far better way, and rewrite this class? And so, yes. And so I put it in, and it did it and returned it. It was great. And it did all that, gave me step-by-step stuff. And we did that and talked about the key changes. Okay, so this is great. I'm going to do a diff compare and try to understand how you did this. So I opened up my dev utilities where I could do an easy diff compare. You know, we all have one, right? And so I looked at it, I looked at this, and I went through it, trying to understand what changes it made so that I could become and understand it better. Okay? And then, oh wow, that's a lot more efficient and connected. And then I asked it to do all the other classes. Now that I had confirmation that it worked, I just went boop, 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 boop. And then I went through, and I could see that this is happening. So my conversation is, I'm going to give it a shot. I want you to tell me if it's wrong. I'm going to test it. Does the compiler throw a hissy fit? If it doesn't, in Xcode, I could see it gives me great feedback on testing to see if something is efficient. So I could rate it. I could speed rate it. I could see what's happening. I could see how many resources it's using. I could understand the environment that it's running in on different devices, on an Apple TV, on an iPad, on an older iPad. Everything is there, so I could see what's being more efficient when I run it. So I could see, wow, this was a very more efficiency, of course, because it's dry. If it wasn't, that's a little bit different. And then, again, let me go through this again to see and learn how it is. So it's again and again and again. Again, when I showed it to Joe, who's more of a seasoned developer than I am, he said, this is really funny. I said, why? He says, because you have this conversation with it. I don't do that. I just put it in, and I just debug it, and I keep it moving.
Can I ask you a question?
100%, yeah.
What kind of results would Joe get with this approach?
That's really good. Joe is an AI freak. I love Joe. He's amazing. He tests every model. He stress tests every model. He likes to tweak them. He writes his own, okay? He's like completely in it, all right? And I have mad respect for him, okay? So it's kind of unfair because Joe would probably write a class better than I did, and he would probably get it better. And I would venture to say that when we talk, he laughed at me. He said, wow, you put your whole class in there. I said, well, yeah, it's not that big. It's only like maybe 120 lines, okay? He says, I would try method by method. And I said, okay, why would you do it like that? He said, well, what you want to do is you want to try to target what you're trying to do. And I said to him, just being very honest, I said, okay, you have a better understanding of that than I do, okay? Yes, I could write this, I could code it and everything, but you have to know where you are. You have to know that, okay, this is my limit. So for me, as a developer who has a career in software engineering, I still am taking the learning aspect of it. So his results are radically different than mine, okay? And the stuff that he is actually doing, he's way more experimented. I'm doing things that are just, it's just doing server calls, it's just crazy stuff. This is all boilerplate stuff, really, in my mind. He's out there thinking, okay, I have a 3D generated model for doing something with cancer. How do I render this in this? Just off the chart stuff. So I can't answer that question because it's an unlevel playing field. Which maybe that was his surprise. Maybe his surprise was I was so pedantic about it. Okay? But for someone who is seasoned and doesn't know something, this might be good. But this really is more for someone who is beginning or a beginner expert, or someone who doesn't know how to necessarily use it, and how do I make it viable? How do I learn something? Back in 2013, I was invited to a trends consortium to speak. And my topic was, in the future, everybody's going to have to know how to code. Just like back when we were all dazzled by WordPerfect, function F7, okay, on the mainframe. And it was challenging to send your documents to print through the mainframe. That's writing a document in WordPerfect seemed really challenging, okay? Then came Microsoft Word. That was a lot easier, okay? And that knocked out WordPerfect, okay? And then, but it was still challenging. And then you would see everybody, you got to know Microsoft Office. You got to know how to do a document in Word. Do you know how to do that? You're not going to get this job if you don't know how to do a document in Word. Now that seems so banal. It seems like so foolish. Why would that stress you out? Well, we're in the same place with getting to a place where coding and kind of hacking your world is going to be essential. There's going to be more opportunities for you to hack. Why? Because we're not going to be able to trust anything anymore, especially if you're working in your own data lake, okay? Who here publishes false information about themselves on Facebook so that Facebook can't really find out about you? If you want to protect yourself and your real information, disinformation is the best way to go. Flood it with complete false information. You're private again. But how do you do that? How, as a amateur, a beginning expert, do you actually do that? Well, back in 2013, I had no idea about this, but I could see patterns, I could see things in the future. And this is actually kind of that solution. It's a solution now that I live in a building in Brooklyn, and there's this dude, he's great. But I see him all the time, and of course we're New Yorkers, so we never talk to each other. But I see them all the time in the elevator. And so one day, after like 3 years of seeing him, I'm saying, hey, you're a developer. He says, yeah, I'm a developer. I said, where do you work? He says, oh, I'm at Facebook. He says, oh, okay. I said, how's it going? He said, I left. I said, you left? This is like 6 months ago. I left, why? He said, oh, we were doing some studies with AI, and I just saw it. I'm not going to be able to compete with it, so I left. I stopped programming. I said, what? You left Facebook? He said, yeah. I said, what are you doing now? He says, oh, I opened up a print t-shirt place on Coney Island. I'm printing my own t-shirts. You need a custom t-shirt? Come and see me. I'm like, seriously? You left a job at Facebook to own your own t-shirt print company? He says, yeah, I'm a lot happier. Boom! You know what went through my mind? I have 1,000 ideas that I can't execute. Yeah, we're going to have some fun. I found my pair programmer. I found my compadre so I could actually learn the things that I want to do, who will never tire of me, never roll their eyes, who will always be able to say, hey, try it like this. Now, I might think that they might have went out to the pub a little bit late and they're, a little bit hungover because the answers they give might not always be correct. But we always had those days, okay? But when Siri came out, the best comment I heard about Siri was from a woman who had an autistic child. And she said, I love Siri because my child can constantly play and ask questions to her, and she never reprimands him. She's always available to answer a question. He has found this perfect playmate because he always has someone who doesn't get tired of him. And I thought that was really beautiful. That was something I didn't expect to happen. Okay? And so what I didn't expect to happen was for me to actually, after spending so many time in user experience and doing my job, I didn't expect to come back and actually say, oh, I'm going to get back to software engineering because I really enjoy it. And now I have an avenue for it. And that's my talk. Any questions? Okay, go ahead. Wait, first of all, was this valuable? Yeah. Was this not valuable? Oh, I'm never going to get these 45 minutes back.
No, it's good. It was valuable. I wish I had more time.
Okay. All right, so question.
I use the free version. What is the $25 a month?
Oh my God. It's night and freaking day. Best $25. And here's the thing. Who here has their own LLC? You all have to have your LLC. You have to write all this stuff off. Everything that you do gets written off. All your subscriptions, all your phones, all your technologies, write that off. Get that shit back from the government. Go out there now, get your damn LLC. I've saved hundreds of thousands of dollars in my 30 years by having my LLC. I write everything off. Oh, look, that's my studio in my apartment, half my rent. LLC is the best tool that you have. You have to use it. Okay? So if you don't have an LLC, your homework for this weekend, no, you need to have an LLC. Okay? Delaware's played out. Don't get your LLC in Delaware. I got mine in Florida. I spend $70 a year to have an LLC. If I was in California, it would cost me $3,000 to $4,000 a year before I showed a profit to get. So put your Republican hat on. And
So what's the $25 a month get you?
so $25 a month. Sorry, thank you for correcting me. All right, so here's the thing. You get what you pay for in the world. Okay, $24 a month, you're using the older versions of the model, which isn't prowess. You could actually get the new versions, and they're a lot better.
Okay.
I will say this, Joe did a test. He used the ChatGPT 1.0 and the ChatGPT 4.0 to run some creative tests. And he came back and he said, if I was gonna do anything creative or artistic, I would use the older versions because they suck. And you get more romantic, you get more outrageous results with it. It's actually more creative. It's less in tune to reality. I said, that's pretty brilliant. He says, isn't that wild? I'm like, that makes sense, but that's pretty brilliant. Okay? So maybe if you're doing creative work, just don't pay for it and always be more creative.
Okay, thank you.
Okay? Question?
Yeah, I heard you say you use a MacBook for work. So as far as GPUs are concerned, how do we compare them to like an NVIDIA GPU?
I have no idea. I pick my battles. And I decided to become native. Well, why don't you make it for all devices? I don't know, you're going to pay for my Google Dev? All right,
And
yes.
then the other thing, talk
Yep.
about comments. Do you leave comments in production code?
Yeah, all the time. I leave comments in production code. I did get pinged when I was working on Sean Kingston's site because I got bored and I ran all my comments through a Jamaican translator. And that was funny. What the guan? I was like, oh boy, John, what are these? And I just heard my manager laugh hysterically. He's like, these are some really great comments. But I wouldn't recommend doing that. Also, who had the documentation question? Someone had a documentation question. I use it all the time to write documents. Now when I do it and I vetted it, I say, okay, could you take this class and document it? And it does it really granularly. It's really great. Okay? Say it again?
Creating an LLC just as a...
Oh, to create well, I have it as an artist because I'm a fine artist by trade. Okay? And actually, by being a fine artist, I could say, yeah, anything's an art project. Yeah, I don't care. Yeah, I'm making an app. It's an art project. Okay? But you choose something. Oh, here's for an LLC, look at the government codes. So you align your business to a government code because one time I had to do a site for Caltech and I had to make sure that my business fell in line for the SAMS authorization in order to get paid through the government. So if you're unsure about what that looks like, look at the government codes and pick your 303 or your 402 and make sure you align and then follow on that. You'll find out it'll be a lot